We're joined today by Edward Alferoff. Edward is the co-founder and senior partner of Vital Planning Group, a financial planning firm providing financial solutions and wellness for individuals and businesses. Edward is here to talk about his career in the industry, the challenge he's encountered and overcome, and the dedication he brings to the job every day, helping his clients with their financial planning. I'm Paul Blanco, and this is Small Steps, Big Wins. Edward Alferoff, welcome to Small Steps, Big Wins. You know, it's interesting when I think back to meeting you around 10 years ago, you know, really making a change, coming from one carrier to another. And, you know, you are such a different person. I've watched you grow, and I'm so glad to share your journey with all the listeners today. So I'm really excited about today's show. So welcome again.
Well, thank you very much for having me here. Yes, it's so funny because I've been thinking a lot about 10 years. Actually, December 8th is 10 years for us, Paul. So we've been married literally for almost 10 years at this point. So
amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun, doesn't it?
I agree 100%. So let's kind of start this journey this morning on how'd you come into the career? How'd you get started? And like, why financial services? I always like to ask that because people forget like how they got where they are. So tell us how you started.
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's funny. I always tell people that my entree into the career was not by design. It was actually kind of by accident. I used to be in advertising. And I absolutely couldn't stand it. And the way that industry worked is that once you started venturing down a path, you were kind of pigeonholed into that path. So for me, it was government. And believe it or not, I had the IRS as a client. It's like the worst client you can ever have.
Yep.
And that kind of drove me from the business. And so when I came to the business, I was kind of at a crossroads because our agency had lost to the IRS as a client. And I could have moved with the client, but I didn't want to. So I actually happened to know this guy that I ran into in the city. I used to see him at the gym. And this guy was like the most polished person you can ever imagine. He looked impeccable. He's a really, really nice guy. And I'm not the type of person that, will, ask people too much about themselves. I'm just very pleasant, of course. But I ran into him in the city. He was with his manager. And, I actually happened to go to a career fair at that point. And, he asked me what I was doing there. And I was like, well, I'm kind of in between gigs. I'm just trying to figure it out. I explained to him what I had been doing and that I was kind of done with what I was doing. And he said, well, have you ever considered a career in financial services? And I said, no, I've not actually. He said, well, you should talk to my manager who's here, this guy, Joe. And if this guy looked amazing and impeccable, you can imagine what Joe looked like. He was like to the whole other level. I mean, not a hair out of place. His nails were polished. He was just anything and everything you can imagine. And of course, Joe, says to me, hey, would you consider a career in financial services? And I said, well, I don't really know what that is or how it works. So he kind of explained it to me. And, he thought it would be a good path for me. And I really wasn't sure. And I remember saying to Joe, hey, Joe, I'm kind of accustomed to earning money and an income. And my understanding of how financial services works is that you're kind of building it from zero, right? It's commission, it's fees, it's this, it's that. And he's like, oh, you don't have to worry about that. We're going to take care of all of that for you. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? Don't I need to find clients? And he said, oh, yeah, no, we're going to give you clients. I said, really? I'm like, sign me up. So I studied for my exams. 4 months later, I come to the office chomping at the bit, ready to go. And this guy hands me, I kid you not, a 5-year, like it must have been about 5 years old, the business to business yellow pages, and basically told me to figure it out. And of course, I sat there having a panic attack. And I was like, oh, crap. I had one of those moments like, what did I get myself into? Anyway, I'm pretty logical. And so one of the things I did, which will take us, of course, into the medical career, which is something I know that you wanted to touch upon, is I found the guy who I thought was the smartest guy in the agency. But he was also very difficult to work with, and nobody wanted to work with him who was newer in the business like myself. So, of course, the logical thinker in me said, well, if I work with this guy, 2 great things are going to come out of it. Number one, I'm going to have a market, which is medical, of course, medical and dental. And then if I can tolerate working with this guy, then it's going to be all up from here. It'll be great. Blue skies ahead. So that's what I did. I basically asked this guy to mentor me. He said, sure. I told him I would do anything and everything that I needed to do to just basically open up your playbook. And so he told me how to, basically book seminars and basically gave me the playbook for that. And I think he was kind of surprised at the results because I was kind of a quiet, shy, really unassuming kind of person. And literally like my first 2 weeks, I must have booked a couple of dozen workshops, probably more than he thought I was doing, more than he could probably handle. So I worked with this guy for about a year and just watched him. He was like watching great theater. And he used to always say to me that, basically giving a presentation was like great theater, essentially, that even the understudy should be able to pick it up. So, I never forgot that. And then a year came to pass and I decided I was going to make a move from the agency because this guy was super difficult to work with. And so I made a move. And so I thought, I've seen this guy present for a year. I ought to be able to do this. And so I remember booking my first workshop for myself, standing in the middle of a room of about 30 physicians. I'm like seeing white spots. I'm sweating profusely. I'm wearing like the cheapest suit you can imagine. And I had to take a time out about 2 minutes. And I'm like, look, I know I look crazy up here. I'm like sweating profusely. I'm wearing a cheap suit or whatever. It was very self-deprecating. And I said, but I promise you, I know my stuff. And I said, I think at the end of the day, that's probably all that matters to you guys. If you guys give me a chance and just hear me out, this is actually the first time I'm doing this. I said, I thought this was going to be easy. I watched somebody else do this for a year. It seemed easy. And here I am. And I'm just nervous as all hell. So that was kind of my starting point. And it was kind of funny because I think I had my Rudy moment. They all got behind me and, let their guard down. And it was from that point on, it was perfect. It was great. And that's what I kept doing. I kept booking myself workshops, doing the workshops. And to be very honest with you, I was super terrible at it, but I was willing to put myself out there and to keep trying and failing and stumbling and anything. And I was open to it all because I knew that for me, I had burned the boats, so to speak. I was never going to go back to advertising. I never wanted to. It was no interest of mine. And I knew that if I could only last and had the right mindset, that I could basically make this career work. And so that's what I did basically. And I surprised myself. So,
I love it. I really love it. I love that the burn the boat thing is amazing. But, I think putting yourself out there and being vulnerable enough to say what you said to that group, which gave you the Rudy moment, I think was maybe it wasn't planned, but it was a very good tactic that you had. I want to go a little deeper on this because I think that, obviously you found a market that he introduced you to, the medical dental market, but the seminars that you were booking was really just filling the top of the funnel, meaning it's great to be an educator and get in front of these people, but the follow-up afterwards was where the real rubber met the road. You had 30 people at the first one. Did you learn like the process of the follow-up from him? And how did you do on that part? Because listen, if you do the workshops and you book 6 a week, but you don't make any new clients, then, your business really doesn't grow. So why don't you tell us a little more about that?
Yeah, I found, Paul, that, being self-deprecating early on, just being very humble always worked for me really well. My father was very much like that. And so what I would do basically is when I left my first gig, I kid you not, I had like 2 binders full of people who had attended these workshops that this other person had given that first year. And I used to make jokes out of it. They'd be like, which one are you? Are you the older gentleman, the guy who was a little bit snooty or what have you? And I'd be like, no, I was the younger, more good looking guy, right? The guy who didn't really speak all that much, but I have a lot to say now. So essentially, it was a lot of grinding, basically, a lot of working nights, until 9 o'clock, as late as I can call them. Even calling on weekends, I would do that. And I was always just super nice, super kind. I would kill them with kindness. And you're right. It wasn't, was I getting the response rate that I wanted initially? No. But my conversion rate was pretty good because I had had a year under my belt of learning the market, understanding the languaging that would resonate with them, like their student loans, or this one was in residency, or this one was in fellowship. You get to know all of these things and you can kind of speak to them on a different level where they know that you understand their needs. And then, of course, that was my point of entree into learning about disability. It's a great market for selling insurance. And of course, starting out at an insurance company, it was perfect. It actually helped me to survive in the business. The early years are survival. So
yeah, but you had the right attitude. Like, if I can get here and just keep learning and stay alive in the business, then I know it's my career, and you burn the boats, which is pretty cool. So I guess, you're in this mode right now, and I'm sure there is multiple points of your career that we can talk about. And let's start at that point though. Was there a turning point where you woke up one morning and you're like, all right, the boat's burned, but it clicked? And was there something that happened that made you say, I know I'm going to be successful? Not I want to be, but now I know it. Was there a point in early career?
Yeah, that for me was my fourth year in the business, because that was when I had made what was at my former agency the equivalent of leaders. And so I was feeling very good about myself. All the hard work had paid off, but I realized also that I would need to replicate that. And for me, that breakout year, so to speak, was 2007. And then, of course, 2008 happened. Yeah. And I remember midway through the next year, my production was about a quarter of what it had been the year prior. And I was a really, really tough spot. And so it's just really all a matter of being resilient and believing in yourself, and knowing that no matter what, you're just going to continue to work on your mindset. You're going to continue to do all the things that you can control. And then, kind of leave it at that, essentially, because we can't control every last thing, right? But we can control our efforts, our attitudes, always being curious and learning, and everything else that makes us who we are, right? So that has always been my attitude. And I've always just try to constantly be growing and being very, of course, hopeful. And one additional point on that, Paul, because I think I had mentioned to you that anxiety, depression is something that I really, really struggled with. So if you can imagine working on mindset diligently every single day, even to this day now, is something that I'm very, very passionate about, and something that I work very, very hard on. Some days are better than others, like for most of us, but it's something that I'm very, very, very passionate about.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. My pleasure.
When I think of what's going on in our society today, obviously, that got highlighted, and the stress and the mental part of the business was probably harder in the beginning, and then '08 hits. But, you made a point there to say that still to today, I still work hard on that.
Oh my God, yes.
I would love you to share some of the tactics or strategies that you've used to continue to work through this.
Oh my God, my journey started even in high school. I was in and out of therapy since high school, which is crazy. But it's been a long journey. It's been a journey of self-discovery. A lot of work has gone into it. There have been a lot of things for me that have been life-changing. I'm actually rereading Awaken the Giant Within, which is an amazing book. And it's hitting me now in a different way than it did when I initially read it almost 30 years ago, which is so crazy. But there are some things that I do every day that help with my mindset, if I'm being honest. Like, I'm an avid meditator every day. I have to do that to set my mind right, to make sure that I'm kind of calm and at peace. I also exercise like you every day, although I don't look like you, of course. We exercise a little bit differently, going for a little bit of a different look.
I gotcha. Well, you're definitely killing it on that then.
I appreciate that. It's funny because last couple of years I was going for designations, and I accomplished that. And then I use that time in the morning where I was typically studying. Now I become an avid reader. And all the books that I'm reading are books with purpose, like The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success, Awaken the Giant Within. I've read other books like from Deepak Chopra or whomever, anything that can kind of feed the mind, if you will, because obviously there is nutrition, there's spirituality, there's, you go to the gym and all this other stuff, but there's also mental wellness and making sure that you're okay, because all of our lives are very challenging, right? There's peaks and valleys in every day, and it's a matter of how you sort of tackle that. So I work very hard on it. And again, it's just a journey, and it's not something that I'll ever sort of stop doing. Probably should have been a psychologist in a previous life, because I minored in college, and most of it had to do with the issues that I was having personally myself. Big on cognitive behavioral therapy. I've read up on all. I've self-administered. As crazy as that sounds, it is all true. So,
well, I appreciate you sharing that, and I think there's a couple of really interesting points there, right? Where being a lifelong learner, no matter what it is. And there's a saying that, you talked about your physical health, but they say we always think about we have to work physically and move to drive our own health, but we also have to work our mind as much. So I give you a lot of credit for doing that.
Thank you.
And I've been saying this a lot the last couple of days, but if you're disciplined and create a habit, then that drives the behaviors, which you've done, right? And the other thing that I think is a really good point that you should all be listening to here is, you made a very subtlety about rereading Awakening the Giant by Tony Robbins and how it hit you today, very different than it hit you the first time you read it. And there's a saying that I really truly believe is that the teacher arrives when the student's ready, right? So
yeah, I love that saying.
So many of you that are listening today, don't think twice about going back and reading something again, or something will click with you at a different time of your life to change things. So thank you for sharing all that, Edward.
My pleasure.
So you're rolling along now. You're in like your fifth year. And I'm not sure at what point, but I know when we met 10 years ago, you were really just building a team and you guys all came together, and that's the hence vital planning. Maybe you can share how, going from this solo practitioner where you had a mentor, but then you kind of went off on your own and went into this medical market. And then, you shifted gears, not that you changed your market, but you went into teaming and walk through. And I think teaming and making the move to Barnum sort of was around the same time. So why don't you share some of the stuff around that?
So, actually Vital Planning was not my first team. It was my second team. Actually, the first team failed miserably. We all had trouble getting along, which is important if you're going to be on a team, right? But the genesis of the idea of team is really collaboration for me and a little bit of a support group. And the other thing too is, having people who complement your strengths with their strengths, right? They say, well, 1 + 1 is equal to 3 or beyond or what have you. But that was the idea. And so partnering up with, let's say, Barack and Elias, where that started, they had very, very different skill sets than I did. Barack, as you know, is in the qualified plan space. Elias was really a financial planner before it became in vogue and he was managing money. And me, I've always been a bit of an insurance nerd. I love insurance. Not sure why, but I just do. So it seemed to make a lot of sense to play to each other's strengths. And then just over time, adding some key pieces like, Dorlise leaving her industry. She was in retail for many years, had a nice job doing that, and then eventually joined us. And she was obviously a good get because she's amazing at what she does. But it's just adding pieces over time to complement your skill set. And it's not just the skill set pieces, it's cultural fits too. It's kind of like why we came to Barnum, right? You guys had a very, very different culture. And I've always been like, Barnum's amazing in a lot of respects because everybody is so collaborative and so nice. And to be very honest, when we started at Barnum, it kind of threw me. I was like, wow, I just can't believe this is so different than from where I had come from. And it's been a really great experience. And I've always said that you hire really great people in your key areas. There's no such thing as a self-made person. We become who we are because of the people we surround ourselves with. And I think this community has been amazing for me personally.
Yeah, 100%. And they feel the same way about you guys. And it's, when you're at that point of your career and you make that move, it's not simple, but when you have people that truly care and you care and, you win. And it's interesting, Edward, when I try to explain Barnum out there, I should have you as a poster child because we talk about.
I'm going to send you a bill for this, by the way. So
please do. But when we talk about this, it's interesting because you brought up something that I haven't really talked about on the show. But I try to teach my leaders here their job is to be resource brokers and help the advisors to navigate and use all the tools that are here. And you said something in, the last piece of your story you were telling earlier about being curious. And I think when I watch you and you're stacking one good day on the next, but you're getting more curious each day, and that is helping you tie more things in. And I think that, maybe we'll shift gears a little bit, but you took, you got here and you took what you were doing in the medical space, and then you and one of your partners, Sona, joined PlanSmart.
Mm-hmm.
Now you've taken that where you did it, you're still in your medical market, but now you're doing PlanSmart to major corporations and taking the time to become an expert on that as a team. So why don't you talk about how that's helped you? And it was a change from speaking to medical people to corporations, but that was a major paradigm shift.
It was, and it was great. It was a great shift, to be very honest with you. I think that, market diversity is very important, not just to focus on one, but sometimes things are not going so great with one market. And then to have other, markets could be a great thing for business, of course. The one thing that I love about any level of financial literacy, whether it's to doctors or, to companies, is I do feel like we're creating impact in something that's so super important, because most people are very stressed out, often, right? Because life is just pressure packed, but a lot of it has to do with money related issues and challenges. So to the degree to which I can create impact by operating in that space and creating and bringing true value to a discussion, even a one-on-one, even if I know, Paul, at the end of the day, this person will not become a client, maybe they don't have money to invest or whatever. But if I can offer up a word of encouragement or something to that person, that they know that the little things that they do can go quite a long way over time, given that time, I feel really great about that. So PlanSmart has afforded me the opportunity to do that and to expand my horizons. The other thing is I take it very seriously that when I'm giving a workshop, even if I've given it a number of different times, to bring something different to a workshop. So I don't just roll into a workshop and give a workshop. I think about what's going on maybe in the economy or life experience or something that's going on with a client. And I try to bring that into the discussion as an example. So, because I do think that we're here to serve people and create as much value as we can. And the best way that I can do that is just by putting the time in, to be honest.
Well, that's great, Edward. And you're doing that. There's a buzzword in the industry today and in business, I should say, called scale. But there's an old buzzword that's kind of back right now, and it's called momentum, right?
Mm-hmm.
You've scaled your team, but now when I look at you, you're clipping at that, 20, 30% growth each year, and you continue to reinvent yourself. Like really, you took on the investment business yourself and really took the time to get your designation and learn in that space. Why don't you talk about the momentum you have and how you're able to, continue to grow and how you're looking at the future? I'd love you to share some of that.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me personally, it's always about wanting to learn and to get better every day in every way that I possibly can, personally and professionally. I've gone back and even reread books on investing in estate. I'm reading an estate planning book right now, just because I want for my knowledge to become so seamless that, it just almost becomes like an afterthought. But I do that even with my communication skills. It's something that I work very hard on. And it's exciting for me too, because there's always room for improvement. You're never going to hit a level of perfection. And I think it's always about just making progress and moving that ball forward. So I'm excited for the business. I've seen this business transform over a number of years. Obviously, me being more insurance focused, and now me being a little bit more of a coach, consultant, a teammate, a mentor. That's very, very exciting for me. And it's a way for me to provide contribution to not only clients, but even younger advisors at Barnum. Any possible way that I can give back and contribute to the culture, I'm always down with. So I love it because there's no day is ever the same, and they're all extremely interesting to me. And there's always something to learn and always something to get better at. And I think that you're always well served if you're always curious and always want to get better. And if you have that attitude, most things will work out in life if you're very passionate about what you do. And I love what I do because I get to serve people, and I'm very passionate about that. But in serving people, I'll take that beyond the professional. It's like my kids, my family. It's anyone that I encounter in a given day. I always try to offer up a word of encouragement or what have you.
Well, I love that. And I guess the question is as you've grown in this career, in the beginning, you're fighting to just stay alive, as you said earlier, but is it easier to focus for you now based on all the things you've put into place for yourself to stay focused and to stack those good days on top of each other?
It definitely gets easier. This business is such a grind. And when you're just trying to survive and pay your bills, that could be so stressful. So, it's easier now for sure, which gives me peace of mind, which gives me the ability to be a lot more focused on the things that I want to improve at. So yes, it is easier in a manner of speaking, but it's not easier in some respects because obviously with team, I have to be a very thoughtful person, collaborative, a leader, even to the agency at large or to clients or what have you. But again, that just kind of, makes it very exciting for me. So yeah, I mean, I think in a manner of speaking, just the long and short is that it is a little bit easier, but it will never be easy if you aspire to greater things. And I'm not even talking about financial rewards only, Paul. It's the idea that you can evolve to become the best version of yourself every day. And so that's something that I strive for. So I love where I'm at now, and I'm super excited for where I'm going.
Well, that's kind of where I was going to go to kind of wrap this up today when I think about it. And, you have really figured out that to continue to move forward and grow in the business as an entrepreneur, it's just as important to continue and grow forward as a person and be well-rounded in all the other aspects of life. My question is what's next for you? Like when you look out 3 years, 5, 10, like when I bring you back on the show in 5 years from now, what are you going to share with the listeners?
Oh, that's such a great question. That's so interesting to me because I don't even recognize the person that I was yesterday practically. And that's always the goal, is just to improve each and every day. So I couldn't tell you where I'm going to be in 3 years. I just know, or 5 years or 10 years, I just know that wherever I am, I'm going to be the best version of myself. I'm going to be a little bit less stressed out, more at peace. All those things that I strive to attain, more knowledgeable, of course, probably more confident, better father, better husband, all of those things. Because those are things that I just strive to be. Now, I'm kind of the mindset that the finances and everything take care of itself if you lead your life very passionately and authentically. So in terms of where the future is, I'm excited for it, but I couldn't tell you. I don't even think about things like retirement or anything else. I'll probably just do this until I drop, if I'm being honest. But I love it. And I don't know if that's the answer that you were looking for necessarily, but that's the God to honest truth. I don't know where this is going, but I'm excited for it.
Well, I know that, from a numerical standpoint, you'll be in the top 1% of the industry. You'll go to the top 0.5%. But I think that for everyone, listening, stop for a second wherever you are and really take it in what Edward said. He said that if each single day he gets better in all aspects of life, and then you stack that day on the next day, the results are infinite of where you can go. And when Simon Sinek wrote the book, Infinite Mind or Infinite Gains. And he talks about there's no end. And so you have no end in your own personal growth. So there'll be no end in any aspects of life on the way you're going. So I really appreciate you sharing this stuff, Edward. It's amazing what you've accomplished. And, every time we talk and do a one-on-one, I compliment you on how you've grown and continue to grow. So stay on that journey. For everyone on here, become a lifelong learner, really follow some of the footsteps that Edward has. Part of that is listening to Small Steps, Big Wins. Listen to us on Apple, share it with your friends. Let them understand, especially if they're in the industry, but even if they're just an entrepreneur, let them understand what people like Edward and all the other people that I've had on the show have done to grow and to continue to keep themselves inspired. So Edward, I can't thank you enough, not only for being on the show, but for all you do.
Well, thank you for being such a great partner, a great friend. And, I appreciate the invite. It's been great. I look forward to being back on in 3 years and, like seeing how things have worked out, although I feel like we're going to both be in a much better place.
100%. So can't wait for that. So we'll get that date on the calendar, but go have a great day. And thank you again for being here today, Edward. Bye-bye.
You too. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Small Steps, Big wins. Please rate, review, and subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
All opinions expressed by the program participants are solely their current opinions and do not reflect the opinions their respective parent companies or affiliates or the companies with which the program participants are affiliated. Investments or strategies mentioned in this program may not be suitable for you, and you should make your own independent decision regarding them. This material does not take into account your particular investment objectives, financial situation, or needs, and is not intended as recommendations appropriate for you. You should strongly consider seeking advice from your own investment advisor. Securities and investment advisory services offered through qualified registered representatives of MML Investor Services, LLC. Member SIPC, 6 Corporate Drive, Shelton, Connecticut, 06484, telephone number 203-513-6000.